This is Gemara Metziah, Daf Kuf Gimel, and today's shiur for Dalid Sivan has been generously sponsored by a close friend of the Daf as a Schos Alias Neshama for Israel מאיר. Ben Tzvi Halevi, whose yahrzeit is today, her first yahrzeit, Psiyata Dishmaya, the Schos HaTorah, Talmud Torah Barabim, Torah B'tzibur, should bring Israel Meir Ben Tzvi Halevi higher and higher in Gan Eden Shalmayla, closer to the Kisei HaKavod, be a Melitz Yosher for his entire family, B'siyata Dishmaya. We're holding on, Kov Beis, Amid Beis, about 12 lines from the bottom. The first one in line is Meipach, Boi Mine Me Rav Yanai Ashayla, that they asked of Rav Yanai as follows. Soicher Oimer, the renter says, Nosati, I paid you. The landlord says, I never received the money. Who has to bring the proof? Says the Gemara, Emas. When is this dispute happening? If it was within the time, we learned it. And if it's not within the time, we also learned it. Titinan, as we learned in our Mishnah, 8 lines on the bottom. If within 30 days of a child being born, a father dies, we assume that the child was not padoi, that he did not do the pidyon haben, unless you bring a proof shenivda. The father was nifter after 30 days, then there's a chazaka that he did redeem the child, unless you have a proof that says he did not. So says the Gemara, we should say the same thing, that if the seicher is claiming that he paid before the time was due, we assume the chazaka says he didn't, and you would have to bring a raya. After the payment is due, we would assume that he did, and the masker would have to bring a raya. Says the Gemara, classically, loitzricha biyoyma demishla zmani, on the day that it is due. And therefore, what's the fundamental shayla of Rav Yanai? And therefore, mi avidinish tepara biyoyma demishlam zmani oiloi. So Rav Yanai is in reality discussing a very fundamental shayla. Is it normal for one to pay on the day that it is due or not? And that will determine whether the chazaka is in the seicher or the mascher's favor and who has to bring the raya. So Amar lehu Rav Yechanan tenitua, says Rav Yechanan, I'll bring you a raya. As we turn over to Kov Gimel Amar Aleph, says the Gemara, Soicher bizmanoi nishva v'noitel. Says the Gemara, a seicher, a worker during his time, meaning if he claims he wants to get paid and it's the day that the money is due, and the balabayis and the maschir claims that he already paid, what's the halacha? Nishma v'noitel. The worker swears, and then the worker is able to pay his wage, take his wages. So says the Gemara, Sachir, when it comes to a worker, he has to swear. Why? Misham de balabayis started b'payalov. Because there's a svara, balabayis is started b'payalov. He might not remember. Therefore, the worker has to swear to get his cash. Avalacha, but in our case of a seicher and masker, landlord and a tenant, avalacha seicher mehemin b'shvuah. But over here, the seicher is also going to be believed with a shvuah that he already paid. Since in our case he could make a shvuah on that day, therefore the halacha is going to be we're going to allow him to do so. In the case of a sacher bizmanoi, that's where we're saying that there's going to be a shvuah, because the masker, the balabais, is tar b'payalov. From here we can see in our case of a seicher and a maschir, he'll be able to make a shvuah. Amar Rav Nachman, a similar case. If someone rents a house to his friend Lezer Shanim, and he has a star for 10 years, and then he writes a document saying that Nakita Chambi Shanim, he says that it was really only 5 years. Mehemin, if you're telling me he's believed to say it was only 5 years, Usva Mea Zuzi Bishara. Someone lends 100 zuz in a shtar, Ramle Praticha Palga, Hachanami de Mehemin, and then the guy he claims, oh, by the way, I paid half. Are you going to tell me that he's believed? So how come over here if the shtar says, if the shtar says it was 10 years, why is he believed to say that it was only 5 years? Amar le, Ravina responds, Hachi Ashta, what's your kasha? When it comes to the shtar, what is the shtar for? The shtar is there to collect, and when you collect, you take it, you pay back, you write a shiver, you rip up the document, etc. He should write on it that it was paid, or write a receipt. However, in our case of the masker and the socher, the landlord and the tenant, 10 years, 5 years, Amrlei. Hi, why did you write a document in Kechi? Just so I don't make a chazak that it's mine, and not to actually collect for. And therefore, he would indeed be able to collect, and instead of 10 years, it was really indeed 5 years, and the soicher would have to bring a raya. Amar Nachmin Ashayaladan b'toivai loilam. A person can borrow something forever, bituvai, in its good state, literally. Amar Amari Barada Bashmoa Vudekani Minei, but this is only if he makes a kinyan. Amar Amari Breder Avashi Umahadir Le Kate. And he has to return the handle of item when it breaks, meaning I'm borrowing it indefinitely. But if part of it breaks, then he's going to have to return it. Amar Rava teaches Rava 12 lines from the Mishnah on Kuf Gimel Amar Aleph. Hayman Amar Lechavre. Someone tells his friend Ushlin Mara Lemir Bakbei. Says to his friend, I want to borrow a show to dig up what high pardes of this garden, Rafak Bay. If he digs up the garden, Pardesa. Whereas if he said, I want to borrow something to dig up a garden, Rafak Bay, call Pardesa de Bayi, then he's allowed to go and he's allowed to use it for any garden. If he said this one, then that's what he's allowed to do. If he left it open-ended, then he can do whichever one he wants. Rafik, Va'azel, Kol Pardesa Dislay. Again, and this is like a term of borrowing forever, but then you're also going to have to return the parts of the utensil when it breaks. Amar Papa, Hayman, Amar Chavre, Oslan Haygar Gutam. And then what happened in Vinafla? He said, let me borrow your well, and then the well collapsed. Loi Bani Law, the halacha is the borrower is not allowed to rebuild the well. Garguta Vinafla. But if he said, let me a well, and it falls, then Bani like Begar Garta, then you could fix it. Kari Vazil. Kama Gargusa Diba, he could go and he could dig as much as he wants, because he didn't specify this one, Ba'ara. And the halacha is you'd have to make a kinyan on the field. So different cases in how their arrangement will determine what the final halacha is. Says the Mishnah, wrapping up the 8th parak. And the house falls. You have to give him another house. Hayakot, and if it was small, leyasenu gadol, lo yasenu katan. Echad leyasenu shnayim. Shnayim leyasenu echad. If it was one room, you can't make two, etc. Lo yivchos min achalonis, can't make less windows. You'll have to rebuild it, but you can't change the item at all unless they both agree. Says the Gemara, Heichi Dami, what is the case in the Mishnah? Idamar le bayizeh, then nafal azalei shaliv. Idamar le bayistam, echad amay le yasenu shnayim, kat and amay le yasenu gadol. If he said, I just want to borrow a house, you should be able to make as many as he wants. because it's open-ended, and he should be able to use as many as he wants. Amar Reish Lakish, 6 lines from the end. Amar Lei, Bayish ani maschel lacham, midas archai kach v'kach, yochim aylememro. So what's the chiddush if it was so explicit? Elikiyasa, Rav, and Amar Reish Lakish to Amar Lei, Bayish ani maschel. Something similar to this. V'katim aylememro is the chiddush. Loisrichel the kaya guded in Hara, Mao the tema Maiko zeh the kaya guded in Hara. The case is, we're standing by the river bank. So the Havamina would be, what does it mean, kozed? There's no field over here. So what significance is there? Kamashalan, the Sultana teaches us to know, even in this case, it would be binding. Hadron, Haloch, Hashoyel, Chazara is certainly in store. And now we move on to the new parak, the 9th parak, Hamekabel, Sadeh, Mechaveroi. Says the Gemara, if someone is Mekabel, someone accepts, if someone leases a field from his friend, whatever the minhag is, how to work the field, to plow, to reap, etc., that's what you do. Meaning you don't only get the final product, but even the byproducts, even the refuse product, even the subpar product, all of those items are split equally. Bizmoirais ubekanim ushneim mafsikin es kanim, and they both provide the kanim, the canes, which are items to hold up the plants, etc. Tana, we learned in a brayso, 2 lines down. Gov gimel amid beis makishan agu leiksar ein a rashi lakar like in rashi leiksar. Basically very similar to our Mishnah, but not saying only the positive of what each one could do, but even explicating the opposite that they cannot do. And now ask the Gemara, why? Liksar in Rashi Lakar. The Gemara explains the reason why liksar in Rashi Lakar, if the minhag is to cut, they can't uproot them. Hayamar Bina did itvan ali arai. Vayamar lo mitzinu. La'akar. The reason is because the balabais, the landowner, could say that he wants these plants to fertilize the field. And the farmer can say, it's too difficult. Says the Gemara, Liksar, excuse me. Hayamar, bina the la'akar. That Hayamar loy mitzina. There it is. La'akar in Rashi liksar. Hayamar bina de tinkar arrive. Hayamar bina de titve. Hayamar bina de titzvan. Shneim akvin zeh lamali matam kamer. Matam liksar in Rashi lakar. Why you now let it change like a Rashi liksar? The reason is Bisham the shneim akvin zeh, and that's the reason why you cannot change from the norm that is done in that locale. Says Mar Pshita, it's obvious. The Chiddush is in a place they don't normally weed in the field. He went and he did indeed weed him. I would have thought, what's the reason why I weeded the field? Cause the das was I would not have to plow it again, and therefore he's expecting the farmer, the renter is hoping to get off from the plowing. You have to explain that. You have to say that you're only doing this so that you don't do that. And if you did not explain that, the halach is going to be, you have to do what the minhag is, and you have to, yes, plow, etc. Classically, what's this general rule coming to include? Let's do other Tanur Rabbanim. A place where it's normal that when you lease the field, you get the trees together with it, and that's the halach. The chiddush over here is everyone gets a third of the crop, and he went and he gave only a quarter. So you know why I gave less? The reason was I did not think I would have, the Baal Bayis is taking less because he says I don't want to give away the trees. Kamash Malon, the Baila Lefrush Alei, that he should have been Mefarish. Says the Gemara, and therefore he would indeed have to give, again, Nacham Olakol, Kemina Kamadina. Makish Sharagu Shleila Ascher, in Maschira, and says Gemara Pshita, Loitricha the Kulyam Lekalbi Beriva, again, Valzi Vikibla Betilsa. Maybe the sharecropper could say the reason why you gave me an increased wages was why that I would get the trees kavashlan, that he's able to say you didn't explain that, I didn't know that, therefore you're not allowed to do that. That what? Bavel, you know what they did? They would not give straw to the sharecropper. Lanavkamina says Mardika Inish Diyav Ayin Yafet. Dika Inish Diyav, if there's someone who does give straw, Ayin Yafahu. He's being very generous. But we're not going to learn for him. Amar Rav Yosef. Bochra v'tifsa v'arkavta, says Rav Yosef, the first, second, the upmost layers of the field. The kani de chazira, and the stakes used for the thorn fences. Tebal abayis. Abayis takes all these and supplies these. V'chezra gufei da'arisa. But when it comes to the thorns indeed go to the aris. Klala de milsa. What's the klal? The first white line. Kol ikar. Says the Gemara, Kolika Balma developais, anything that is there for the Balma, for the security of the field, that the Balbais has to pay for. Nitirusa Yisei Rasa Darisa. If he wants an extra level of Shemira, then the Aris has to pay for that on his own. V'amar Rav Yosef Maris Uzivla Davla, a shovel, a hoe, v'davla v'zarnuka, and a pail and a leather bottle to Balbais. Arisa Avid Be Yu'uroi. The Arisa makes irrigational ditches. Kishesh cholkin b'yayin. Kacholkin b'zvurus b'kanin kadam ayvit. Hayu amar d'v'yayin kadam amuchulakim shebahen mamidin es agfanim. The ones that you attach to the grapes to hold up the vines. The shtei mafsikin es aykanim lamali. Matam kamer matam shem cholkin b'kanim. You should the shtei mafsikin es aykanim. The reason is because they both have to supply these canes, and that's the reason why that they both divide them. We'll pick it up from the Mishnah, B'siyata Dishmaya.